Hey, it's Sol with another video. To your right is a short list of the generous contributors who keep this channel going, and maybe you already know that. Today's video is full of spoilers, speculation, and probably a lot of crazy talk. I'm going to talk about Derek Proudmoore, brother of Jaina Proudmoore, and currently a wildcard in this chapter of the Battle for Azeroth story. His tale is full of tragedy, and it's bound to get worse as it goes on. But let's get you all caught up first. Derek Proudmoore was an officer in the Cold Navy and commanded a ship during the Second War, where the freshly formed alliance fought the Orcish Horde. The Horde at the time enslaved dragons, sent them into battle, and well, Derek was killed in combat. Now let's cut forward some 30 or so years to the Battle for Azeroth. The new Horde found his corpse underwater by chance during their early campaign against the Alliance. Given that this is Sylvanas' Horde, she figured, hey, she can one day use this body to her advantage. It didn't take long either. Her first use of Derek was as bait to lure the Alliance away while conducting a different sort of clandestine mission. Later, as the war picked up, the king of Zandalar, Rastakhan, was killed at the Battle of Dazar'alor. Reeling from the defeat, Sylvanas had the brilliant plan of raising Derek Proudmoore as a Forsaken, so she did. But it wouldn't end there. She planned to use him as some sort of sleeper agent, or hidden bomb to use against the Alliance when the time was right. But that required considerable efforts. Sylvanas is not the Lich King. She doesn't have the power to dominate the minds of her fellow Forsaken. In fact, she can't even raise them, that's what her val'kyr are for. So here's Derek Proudmoore, resurrected as a Forsaken, but being subjected to who knows what sort of anguish. Also shown here is Bane the Burger King Bloodhoof, clearly upset at the depths the Horde has sunk for the sake of winning a war that many of his counterparts aren't really happy being a part of. We'll revisit this scene at some point, but for the most part, we're pretty caught up. Derek is being set up to use as some sort of unliving weapon against the Alliance in retaliation of the escalating war. Bane Bloodhoof is furrowing his brows.
I can't believe this is happening to our Horde. My eyebrows are thoroughly furrowed. Moo.
In patch 8.15, the story moves from the battle to the aftermath of the Battle of Dazar'alor, when one of Bane's loyal followers reaches out to the Horde champion to conduct a secret operation for the sake of honor. And here's where things get dicey. The champion goes along with Bane's plan, but somehow Warchief Sylvanas is privy to just about everything that goes on. So far, there's no rock-solid explanation, but when Horde players go through this from their perspective, they can either fully support Bane or choose a more loyalist route and report everything to Nathanos Blightcaller, Sylvanas' favorite puppy. Regardless of what actually happens though, what Bane does is entirely known to those he's trying to fool. Bane speaks to Valeria Sanguinar to arrange a meeting with Jaina Proudmoore, and then directs the Horde champion to conduct a so-called rescue operation of Derek aboard Sylvanas' fancy new ship. Now let's pause for a second. Why is Derek on this ship? Let's cut back to this shot of Derek having a terrific time, raised and having who knows what being done to him. The scene takes place in Dazar'alor, after the battle, after the king is dead, but before Talanji is crowned queen. By the time she is crowned, Derek is gone. So let's speculate. How is it that Sylvanas had an opportunity to use this area, the Hall of Ritual, in the first place? Maybe it's the chaos after the battle when she just annexed the area for her own use. If that was the case, then it might make sense for Derek to be prepared for transport shortly afterwards because, well, with Talanji now in charge, the hall should be vacated in order to avoid unnecessary questions between freshly formed allies. But someone else is missing here too. Why isn't Bwonsamdi here throwing a fit? After all, he's now the Loa above all in Zandalar, so he should be rightfully pissed that there's undead mind-controlling shenanigans going on in his new house. And also, why here anyway? What's so special about the Hall of Ritual? I'd wager that there's significance with the Loa influence as well as the city's Titan origins, but it's just as likely that this room is just an expedient place to conduct some shady business. Those are less important questions that leave holes that still need to be filled. But the popular theory of why Derek was only held in this room for so long is that Sylvanas finished doing whatever she needed to do to Derek and just no longer needed the room. But then he was caged on a ship. Whether or not Sylvanas' influence took hold over Derek, why is he being transported via ship? There are half-assed explanations that are at least kind of reasonable, like maybe you can't safely teleport a mind-controlled corpse, I don't know. Another important question regarding Derek's circumstances when the 8.15 storyline starts is this. Why is he found in Turgard Sound? Plunder Harbor is the only remotely secure port that the Horde has in its possession in Kultiris. It's somewhat reasonable to presume that this ship is making a stop in the area to resupply before a long trip to, actually, where would this ship go? The Horde has very weak holdings over at the Eastern Kingdoms during this time, and Silvermoon City is a long ways away. This ship would not be heading east if Derek was not already corrupted by Sylvanas' influence. It would probably head west to more Horde-friendly territory. But it's contradictory to try and secret a living corpse across the world with only one ship. And it looks kind of obvious, right? The only logical conclusion then is that controlling Derek was in fact successful, to the point where he's either an unwitting sleeper agent, or he's been fully turned and can pull off a really convincing act. Now, with her latest pawn ready, all that's left for Sylvanas to do is to deliver it into the hands of her enemies, which brings us to this latest cutscene. Personally, I don't think Sylvanas planned for Bane specifically to rescue Derek. I imagine that she just left that ship out as bait and hoped for something to bite. As far as we can tell, Sylvanas made very little effort to hide what she was doing to Derek. She raised him out on the docks of Dazar'alor after all, and the Hall of Ritual isn't some secret lair. But if she was successful at turning Derek, that's going to be the secret to hide in order to craft an effective misdirection. So she was hoping for one of several things to happen. 1, the Alliance would mount a rescue and save Derek. 2, she'd make it look like Derek escaped on his own. Or 3, someone would betray the Horde from within and deliver Derek for her. Points 1 and 2 are pretty unlikely. We learn in the reunion cinematic that Jaina is clearly rattled at the sight of her brother. Conveniently though, we don't see a reaction from a certain other someone who's present, Matthias Shaw. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if he knew about Derek, knew about the mind control attempts and Sylvanas' plan, but probably stuck to just observing the Horde's movements. Maybe because a second Battle of Dazar'alor wouldn't be a good idea. Maybe because just the knowledge of Sylvanas' plan is just as good as repelling her attack itself. Point 3 is what we're left with. Bane might have been the target Sylvanas was hoping for, but Saurfang would have been a good catch too. Bane taking the bait takes an otherwise poor attempt at planting a Trojan horse and wraps it with a convincing truth. Sylvanas has gone too far. The loyalties from her leadership are fraying, and wrongs must be made right. And if that's not convincing enough, sometime after the cinematic, Bane is punished for his betrayal, loud and proud for all to see, including the Alliance. Executing Thomas Zellian on the spot is a cherry on top. But Jaina Proudmoore's no fool. After what she went through trusting the Horde, she was ready to blast Bane, Derek, and the ship to Kingdom Come. Even afterwards, she might be convinced that Bane really did deliver her brother out of honor, but she's not ready to believe that Derek can simply return home. Wowhead, among other speculators, have brought up this dagger not so subtly placed on Derek's back. It's there in the cinematic as well as the character model here. Personally, I find the symbolism to be so obvious of foreshadowing that this might be a setup of something more ironic rather than a sign of things to come. Imagine if Catherine was so disgusted by Derek she takes the dagger and shanks him or something. But hey, I've let myself be caught up in a maze of multi-layered plots before to only see that what is the most obvious to us is more often going to be the thing that's going to happen. After the events of the cinematic, Jaina informs Derek that she knows people who can help him. Really? Is that so, Miss I'm gonna run off and brood during a worldwide demon invasion? Now there are mages in Dalaran who are forsaken, such as Meryl Failstorm. So Derek might be sent to Dalaran, which so far has remained neutral in the war. The more popular theory going around is that Kalia Menethil is who Jaina is referring to, but Jaina herself only recently heard of Kalia being alive, let alone her current state. But of course Jaina mentioned others with a plural, so it could be any Forsaken that she knows, not someone she's hooked up with, wink wink. There's at least one other Forsaken who I favor, because he is far more experienced than Kalia at living the unlife, and that's Alonzus Fowl, who was Archbishop while Derek was alive. I believe that he'll serve as the primary mentor for Derek, and things are going to be great. And then what? In the post-cinematic, Derek resigns himself that he's not likely to return home. If he's left in the care of Fowl, well, that means he's going to be hanging out at the Netherlight Temple, the Priest Order Hall during the 3rd Legion invasion. Also note that the temple was formerly a prison. Fancy that. While in the Netherlight Temple, there's a reasonable chance that the Narut Sara will take a look at Derek and see if he can be purified of whatever taint Sylvanas' handiwork left. Whether that's successful remains to be seen. This particular theory is super unlikely, but what if Sylvanas did fail to turn Derek with spell work, but somehow was able to simply talk him into joining her side? Consider this. Derek died fighting against the orcs. He was risen years later, back in the middle of a war. 30 years later, without a final resolution. Could Sylvanas convince Derek that her plans are what's best for Azeroth in the long run? Like, could he really be that dumb? Like I said, this was a pretty stupid theory, but this is a video of, theories and speculation. You never know. Derek's tragedies for sure, though, may not be over. At any point, he could begin his dark work of undoing the Alliance from within, starting with his own family. Or during his new life, he'll learn just how much his kind, the Forsaken, are reviled. Will his mother and brother accept him? Will the people of Kultiris or the Alliance as a whole accept the return of someone who they knew, and not just thought, was lost? And if he is cleansed of corruption, is he done being used for someone else's ends? I'm bringing this up because I have one final theory. Let me set this one up. If Derek is sent to the Netherlight Temple, and I think that this is pretty likely, there will be 3 kinds of undead under the same roof. One was raised by the Lich King, one is raised by Sylvanas' val'kyr, and one raised by a Naru, which makes this potentially interesting. I admit that for a long time I've been a believer of this so-called conspiracy of the light, the Radiant Crusade, where the forces of light are pushing to bring peace and harmony to the Great Dark beyond. However, just like Sargeras wanted to kill all life in the Great Dark, and the Void wants to devour everything, the light wants to enslave it. 3 sides of the same coin, whatever you want to think of it. I strongly believe that the Naru Sara has been slowly influencing Kalia Menethil, with advice while she was awake, and nightmares while she was sleeping. All of this takes place in the Before the Storm book. I definitely recommend giving it a read or a listen if you have the choice, even if I'm spoiling everything here, sorry. Anyway, that was done while she was alive, but her undeath was brought about by Sara herself with the help of Fal and Anduin Wrynn. What kind of purpose the Naru has for her is currently not known. But I think Sara is experimenting. It's worked on Kalia, and it could work on Derek. Imagine if Sara was like, hey, look, there was corruption in Derek and it was like really, really bad. I fixed it, go me. But in reality, Sara was merely reprogramming Derek to serve the light. Really, if I'm going to bet on anything, by the time all this is over, Derek's going to wish that he stayed down with the fish. That's just about all I've got, but I'd love to discuss more here, either in the comments or in the Discord channel, because this stuff is like totally fun. But please don't forget to like the video if you think it didn't suck, and subscribe for more of this and all things Warcraft. I'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.